Hello.
Welcome back.
I'm Nicole.
I'm Megan.
And you are listening to the Synchronicity podcast and YouTube channel where we change your brain to change your life.
And if you're on YouTube, you can see our Dalmatian.
She's hanging out with us for a minute.
She hangs out with us a lot these days.
Yes.
Always. Anyway.
She always hangs out with us. She's been hanging out with us since COVID when we got her.
We are the Synchronicity Sisters. We change your brain to change your life. Using rescripting and reprogramming, using microdosing and communication, we rewire your broca, and we essentially change every aspect of your life, whether you were wanting every aspect of your life changed or not. So, but it's for the better. And today we are talking about how important relationships are in your healing process. I know in like my mentor group and things like that, it's always really interesting to hear when psychiatrists and psychologists are like, oh, you need to take time off of dating in order to heal, or you need to da-da-da-da-da. Let me just tell you something. It is impossible to heal without a reflective mirror. Now, as much as I can reflect and say, oh, well, your scripting is this, or this is off, or that is off. In order to implement the changes, you need someone to practice on. You cannot practice on somebody that you're not really in an intimate relationship with are the best. You know, friendships and stuff are okay, but intimate relationships are honestly the best. And when you want to just like take time off and not do anything, then you're basically just becoming a nun, which is isolation, which, if you want to go join a convent, I've got, more power to you. But the thing is that in order to change, it's really important that you have that mirror. So these people that are like, I've taken time off dating and I'm working on myself. No, you're not. You are basically just collapsing into self, and it's all about self-loathing. It's not about actually changing because you don't have a reflection, so you don't know if you're actually making progress or not. So these people, I know I'm going to get some slack for this, but they're wrong. Even if you're just duty dating and you're not in a serious relationship, that still facilitates a mirror to reflect how you're shifting and changing and the opportunity to shift and change. So it's insanely important that people understand that.
Well, and I think we need to clarify, duty dating is not sleeping around. Duty dating is dating. Going out on dates, talking to people, like...
I didn't say duty fucking.
No, but a lot of people don't know what duty dating is.
No, I'm making a joke.
I'm clarifying that it's not, in Megan's terms, duty fucking. It's duty dating. And getting clear on truly, like, what you want and what you don't want in a relationship, depending if you're a man or a woman. But it is super important because relationships, even like in the workplace and stuff like that, are constantly mirroring your own behaviors and mirroring your triggers. And the only way to actually look at your subconscious mind is by doing what a lot of people talk about, like mirror work, right? It's no different. Like mirror work in a partner. They talk about, if you have done any research or know anything about iboga or ibogaine, if you go down to Africa and you sit with the pygmies, there's actually part of the ceremony where they actually show you a mirror and you look at your subconscious while you're under this psychedelic experience. That's no different than, yes, that's a reflection of you, but a relationship and a partner is a reflection of you because we are attracted to what we are in another person. Mm-hmm. It's our soul reflected when we fall in love. And so if you're just like isolating and hanging out with your cats, and that's where like the term crazy cat lady comes in, because women more or less, I feel like women do this more than men do, is they collapse into a whole bunch of animals or a whole bunch of like, I don't know, service, and they just like pretty much tell relationships to fuck off. Well, your growth has stopped there. You're not moving forward. You're not bettering yourself. I'm sorry, I hate to break it to you. Animals are not mirrors. They're not going to show you where your trauma lies. And also when you're in a relationship and you're being triggered, you're seeing your communication come out and you're seeing your childhood traumas in real time. Because all we're mainly doing in adulthood is undoing what we were given in childhood. And so because between the ages of 0 and 3, we become our parents. That's one huge thing. Actually, that is what we do here, is we give you the opportunity to learn to communicate better and correctly than what your parents gave you. And all of that was done in childhood.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Nicole. Like, women collapse into being crazy cat ladies, and men collapse into porn and OnlyFans. I mean, it's both are
Or they become like that grumpy old man. We've all met that grumpy old man.
No,
he's like a recluse.
Yeah, but he would still have to have feminine energy in his life of some sort, or he'd be dead. Yeah. So, you know, it's one of those things that, you know, and everything comes back to communication. Like, our heart chakra and our throat chakra are very, even if you don't believe in chakras, like, that's funny. But, sorry, I just like flashback to some of the experiences I've had in my life when I didn't believe in chakras.
If you've never felt your chakras, go to a Dr. Joe Dispenza retreat. That shit will light you up.
That.
And then rape. Yeah.
Rape was my OG, like, experience with, and we have a podcast on that. We don't have a YouTube, but we have a podcast. I think it's number 15. It was the 15th podcast we ever...
It's way back there.
Yeah, it's way back, but... can hear about like me being enlightened about what chakras are. Not so pretty of a way, like me vomiting violently afterwards. But anyway, you know, again, there's so much work that goes into these things. And, you know, I know that people don't like the word work, but at the end of the day, anything worthwhile we work at, right? Yes. So it's not like there's a destination or, you know, like all of a sudden you're healed. You know, Nicole and I still work at this every day. And the examples and the things that we use are things that, you know, we have to do. Do I like duty dating? No, but that's why there's duty in front of it. It's your duty to grow and to continue to, you know, do the work, right? The 3 non-negotiables are uncertainty, constant work, and pain. And it's not easy to change. Like, it's possible to change, but you have to do what others are not willing to do, which is the work. And, you know, it's learning how to communicate. It's learning to do better than your parents did. And that comes out in seeing where you're flawed or seeing the parts of you that are your parents that you don't particularly like. It's not anybody's fault, right? It's about like seeing and reflecting on that and then shifting, because self-awareness comes from how you're interacting with other people. You're not going to sit alone in a cave by yourself and have these crazy revelations about how, you know, you need to change in relationships, because everything comes back to relationships, right? We are animals that, I mean, essentially beings that have to interact with other people, and our lives are more fulfilled by the relationships that we have. So how do we want to show up in those relationships? You know, do we want to be passive aggressive? Do we want to exert control over other people? Or do we want to negotiate and allow people to be autonomous? This is what we teach, and it's not common in our culture. You know, it's common to victimology, right? And it's so in the unconscious at this point that most people never recognize it. I still pull up things where I'm like, well, I don't, what? And then I go, oh, well, you have to let them do that. If you don't want to act like that, then don't. But you can't force somebody else to do their work. All you can do is reflect them and say, well, I don't appreciate that, or that doesn't feel good, right? If you're in your feminine, that doesn't feel good. If you're in your masculine, you just say, like, I don't think that that's appropriate to be behaving like that. So again, we're doing somebody a favor, but everything comes back to relationship and conflict resolution, because when you have conflict, you're growing, but it's how you have that conflict that's important, right? Because you can have a negotiation that's a conflict, or you can have a rattle battle of a 0 and a 10 and passive aggressive and dysfunctional, where there's a bully and there's a doormat. So we teach healthy ways to be reflected and to grow, and you have to have somebody to reflect in order to do that. And that's what most people aren't getting at when they go to talk therapy. You know, they're not being forced to look in the mirror. They're just reflecting, but what are you reflecting on, and who is reflecting you? So we have to work through relationship quarrels, relationship issues with communication with that other person in order to grow and become the people that we want to be and make our society and culture healthier in doing our work. We help not only ourselves, our friends, our significant others, our children, but that we pass that down just like victimology has been passed. So, in my opinion, it's well worth it.
Well, and the majority of people right now are walking around in relationships projecting all of their pain onto their partners. And so what the main thing is that if you're in a relationship and you're not actively becoming aware of like your triggers and your reactions, like this is triggering me. How am I reacting? Am I emotional? Do I shut down? Am I passive aggressive? Like it's all a projection of your own self and where you can't see. And so this topic is really important in regards to like the mirroring aspect, because a relationship shows you all your blind spots. We can see only so much of ourselves because the conscious mind protects us. But when you're working specifically and in a relationship, you're getting mirrored all of your blind spots. And whether you like it or not, and whether you choose to look at them or not, they're there. Mm-hmm. And so often, at least what I have observed in our culture right now, is that so many people are in relationships where one is a 0 and one is a 10. And it is extremely toxic. And it's even like amazing in our work, like even when we're working with partnerships or onboarding somebody, the amount of like passive aggressiveness or the lack of communication in the very beginning is always like amazes me. You know, like everything from money, like people don't know how to talk about money, to being very aggressive about pushing a contract forward or something like that. It's all in how everything is worded, and it's all in how it's communicated. And majority of our culture is either completely avoidant or they're bullies. And so even when you're working in partnership or companies, business, whatever, it's everywhere. If you just step back and look, you'll see where all of it, the trauma and communication and relationships, are kind of hidden in our culture.
Well, and what's not being communicated, right? It's like you can really see your trauma and your assumptions. Right. And then, right, that's why we need a mirror to reflect. It's like the story in my head is such and such, like what's going on in yours, because 9 times out of 10, the monologue in your head is fucked up. And if you have a dialogue with somebody, you realize like they're coming from a space that's completely different than what your viewpoint was. And I was actually having a conversation this morning with somebody about this. And it's like, you know, you can make every assumption in the book, but that says more about you than what's actually going on with the situation. And that's why relationships are so important, because you're seeing where you're flawed and how you're, you know, it's basically like having blinders on. You can only see things through your vantage point.
Well, it's really truly a projection.
Everything's a projection, and that's why assumptions are so dangerous. And you know, we're making those based off of essentially how we were raised. It's our child ego trauma state, and you know, I do this all the time because I tend to think the worst or brace for the worst instead of like understanding that, oh well, there's an array of possibilities, but we were, you know, and I think a lot of people are like this. You just like go to worst case scenario just to prepare, and then it's like, oh, if it doesn't happen, great. Well, no, you just fucked up your nervous system. There's no difference between thinking something terrible is going to happen, preparing for it, and it actually happening. You know, we have to remember that. So, you know, now when I go into those spins, I really do my best to like take a step back and be like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like that's fight or flight. That's masculine. That's problem. Like, let's just go straight into the problem and try to figure out before it's even there. Like, no, you have to trust that everything, the world is happening for you, not to you, and you believe in a good God and a good universe, and not this like terrible, always worst case scenario. You know, so many people live in that, and that's also why they're so controlling and crazy, because their nervous systems are so fucked up. Like they're so programmed into fight or flight or norepinephrine. We just did a podcast on this, that they don't actually believe that good things can happen. And, you know, this is something I'm currently very much working on, is like, oh, just because you get in a fight with somebody doesn't mean the relationship's over and that they hate you. It's like, no, like you talk through it and you open up, and that's what vulnerability is. And, vulnerability happens in relationships. It doesn't happen when you're by yourself. So in order to vulnerability means into the wound. And that's why it's so important for women to guide men into the wound, because they don't naturally have the EQ in order to do that. That's a woman that opens first, right? And says, this is how I feel. This is what I need. And then remember that the masculine has to surrender first. And, we physically, right? We have to go into the wound first and be like, no, I don't want to have sex outside of a relationship. That doesn't feel good. Like, I don't feel safe, because women fall in love when they feel safe. Men fall in love when they feel respected. And it's very, very important that we start to really understand femininity, because we've been so programmed into our masculine, out of vulnerability, out of being able to communicate. Like vulnerability, communication, all of these things, relationships are ruled by the feminine. And we have completely there's no education anymore on how to do these things. And that's what Nicole and I are really trying to implement back. And it's crazy to watch other women. I'm like, oh my gosh, I see myself in her, because and I see my own growth. And I go, oh my gosh, I used to be just like that. It's like controlling, passive aggressive, manipulative, like just survival, instead of, oh, right, we're building something together. Oh, right, like people do have my best intention at heart. Guarded. It's just it's so fascinating to watch. And we're just here to tell you don't have to live like that. There's a different way of being, and it's not an easy path, but I will tell you that it's so worth it, because the way that I feel now and how I move through the world is completely different than I was 4 years ago. And it is terrifying at times, and it takes a lot of grounded energy of okay, stepping into vulnerability, because I'm not naturally able to do that, because again, femininity has been so programmed out of us that we're terrified of being vulnerable. But intimate relationships, you have to be vulnerable. And when I do take those steps into that, it actually feels amazing, because it takes so much bravery, right? It takes so much courage, and it takes so much of the feminine being okay with not knowing, right? It's it's not for us to know how something's going to end. It's just for us to step in and open into it and see what happens. But with children being so programmed into masculinity, especially women, we are having to relearn how to do that. You're recalibrating the nervous system, and it is it's a wild ride. It's so worth it, but it is such an interesting thing to feel your feelings and be in that. And you're just well, I don't know where this roller coaster's going, but we're on it, and here we go. But all I can say is that there's nothing in my life that has been better than to embrace and step back into that, even though it's just kind of you're kind of like a deer in headlights some of the time. You're just oh, this feels crazy, because it's just not, like I said, it's not taught anymore, and it needs to be.
Well, it's easier to not be in a relationship than to be in one.
But
the hardest thing that you'll ever do is be in a very serious relationship, be in it, be vulnerable in it, instead of just two people coexisting. Well, because that's the majority of relationships nowadays.
We've just made, we've just made relationships sex, and relationships are so much more than fucking and sex. In order to actually, two men can fuck. It takes making love and actually that shift of the mirror in order to really be in love with somebody and make a relationship last. That's what we're not doing anymore. It's instead of mutual masturbation, you're having a soul connection. But in order to have a soul connection, you have to be able to be vulnerable, and you have to have a masculine and a feminine energy. Even if it is two men having sex, right? There still has to be a masculine and a feminine energy, period. I don't care what body you were born into. This is just the law of the universe. If you're going to fall in love, you need a masculine and a feminine energy. If not, then you're not even really going to be attracted to each other, because masculine is friendship, feminine is friendship. So there's not even going to be that magnetism in it. And that's why, when you see a gay couple, there's a very feminine one and a masculine one, just in lesbian couples, right? You have the lipstick lesbian, which is the feminine one, and then you have the masculine one. So it's just funny, right? You can try to get away from this, but there's really no way out of it. So, in my opinion.
No, I mean,
in my experience.
It's all a mirror, and it's the choice of being a crazy cat lady or being vulnerable and getting into a relationship because it's scary, because you have trauma. Life. It's how it works. Welcome to the Thunderdome.
Party on, but we're here for you. Let us know how we're doing in the comments. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, or you have a suggestion, please drop it in the show note, or please drop it in the comments. If you are on YouTube, we're new. Please subscribe, comment, follow, do all of the things. If you're on Spotify or Apple, please rate us, comment, hang out with us. We like to know that there's life out there. And until next time,
Bye.
bye.